Hey pickleballers, and welcome to another episode of the PickleBros podcast. As always, thank you for your likes, comments, and messages. We really do enjoy interacting with you guys and reading your messages online. And shout out to Carbon Pickleball, code PickleBros for 10% off at checkout. And also share us around. We really appreciate the people who've shared us, and we are picking up more subscribers, which is not the end goal of this, but it is very fun and we do enjoy that. So continue to help us grow and share our content around. Today's discussion is going to be pickleball basically on an individual level and a team group, like the group aspect of pickleball, which right now pickleball is a little bit more individual centric, but we're going to be talking about this. But before we get into everything, we of course have to go into what's your beef? I have a good beef today, but who wants to kick us off?
I'll go first today. So I have a beef with my wife.
Hold on, that's a bad start. That's a really bad start.
Risky.
Yeah, okay.
She asked me yesterday, what's your beef? I said, well, you'll just have to tune in.
Oh, boy. All right. Okay, good luck.
So I went to pick up our mail yesterday, and there was a new paddle that had come that I didn't know about, and it was a Carbon One. Great paddle. My wife had ordered it, and it comes with I opened it up, and there was the paddle, and then there's like the invoice. Okay, and it had the receipt there, and I was looking at it, and I happened to notice that there was a coupon code that was used for this paddle. She saved, I think, $20 on it, which is great. So I said, hey, this is cool. You got a new paddle, and that's really awesome that you used the PickleBros coupon code. And she said, oh, no, I didn't use the PickleBros coupon code. I couldn't remember it. I used some other coupon code.
Probably Pickleball Studio.
Yeah. And I'm like,
my God.
Why didn't you use our code? And she's like, oh, I couldn't remember it.
How can you not remember PickleBros?
It's PickleBros.
That's tough. That's
So
really tough.
to our listeners, we're not making a ton of money off of this. I think we've made about $50 so far, but every little bit helps, and it's kind of neat when somebody does it, and we get we get a small commission. So that's my beef.
Oh,
now I have a beef with your wife too.
We should have some reaction to these beefs. Never know where I have a beef with my wife is going to lead to, but then where you went, I am just hurting inside. Oh my gosh. They're like, what could the code possibly, we actually have two variations of the code. It's PickleBros or PickleBro. Take whatever you think would work. Oh my gosh, I'm hurt. I'm going to have to go on mute just to cry and wipe my tears for a bit.
Oh, that's great. Timmy, what's your beef, brother?
Yeah, so we did a podcast a few episodes ago about Ernie's, and my role in this podcast was to act interested, and I was encouraging of you guys as you went through all your tidbits about how to set up the perfect Ernie, how to execute it, why it's a smart shot, all that. I didn't know what you guys were talking about, but I was very supportive of that. But I want to actually apologize to our listeners because we forgot to mention an important aspect of Ernie's. And that is that any match in which an Ernie is attempted is actually 5 minutes longer per Ernie. This is the time that all four players stand around and debate whether or not the Ernie they just witnessed met the checklist of requirements that dictates whether the Ernie was in fact legit or not. Our buddy Sean came back from a tournament in which none of the four players on court had access to that checklist. So he came back with questions about one particular Ernie in which an article of clothing may have broken the plane of the net before the ball was struck. Of course, nobody had video evidence to go back in real time to make sure that was in fact the case or not. So they just stood there, and I'm sure there's a lot of confusion on court, and he came back, and it meant enough to him that he did a Marco Polo about it to us. And of course, we didn't know, so we had to go consult the rule book and get back to him days after the fact. So guys, this isn't really a beef of mine because I'm totally using this to my advantage going forward. Anytime an Ernie is attempted in my presence, I'm going to cite any of the 20 requirements on that Ernie checklist, and I'm just going to call it illegal. And boom, move on. It's our point.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. It's going to slow some things down because I love doing my Ernies. So you're making me nervous, bro. All right. My beef today is with colored lines. All right.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Right. Now you can't make fun of me.
Well, let's see what the next part comes out of his mouth says. Let's before we make our judgments.
I hate playing on pickleball courts that have tennis lines, basketball lines, volleyball lines, any other, combination. And let's not even get into the fact that most of the time you're doing that, it's on a basketball court or has that bad fluorescent gym lighting. I can't do it. And I understand now this is a bit of a high-end diva, prissy take. It's like, I won't play on a pickleball court that doesn't just have pickleball. But we've gotten to the point, and by the way, pickleball in general has grown to the point that it should be unnecessary to force people into playing on shared infrastructure. I can't do it. I hate it. It causes problems. I'm always based on where some of the lines are, like tennis, I'll be on the wrong kitchen line. I'll be 3 feet further back than I need to be. I'm like, why do I feel so far from the net? Oh, because that's not the kitchen line. And then I can't do it. I hate it so much. I can't. My beef is pickleball being played on courts with other sport lines.
Jesse has something to say.
Well, that's a pretty good beef. That's a pretty good beef, but I think you introduced it wrong because you said you have an objection to colored lines.
Yeah, it's different.
But it's not the color. It's not the color of the line. That's the point. The point is you don't like playing when there's lines from other sports that are there. It has nothing to do with the color.
Yeah, the colored line should actually make it easier to distinguish which lines are for pickleball and for other sports.
I knew it. I knew he was off to a good start, but he would crash and burn in the middle of that.
Didn't close the deal on the good beef.
I know. Hey, imagine
close to the sun.
Imagine a scenario where Tim and Ian are playing on a multi-sport court. Happens. It'd be a nightmare. You have all these lines to discuss, and then you can just talk about if it was an Ernie or not. It's like you'd never get through the game.
Don't forget, there's music playing also, so it's bad.
Jeez, I am not in this match. I'm not even there.
Right, and then there's some conversations happening just off by the net. It's like ultimate disaster.
Tough life. Wow.
So, what?
All right, I'll round us out. Yeah, let's see. We started the PickleBros podcast on a quest to give entertainment for the pickleball player by the pickleball player. And when we were doing market research on other pickleball podcasts out there, good night, I was disappointed by what kind of talent is out there. We have pros, we have people who have great backgrounds in communication and broadcasting, but you guys, pickleball podcasts suck. They freaking suck. I fall asleep. There's two people on the screen that I actually enjoy watching play pickleball, or, I've seen clips of or have takes where they have a good social media following. I tune in to a different pickleball podcast other than the PickleBros and literally fall asleep. I cannot hang on. My beef is with pickleball podcasts. I don't want to start to give life to other competition out there, but guys and gals, we can do so much better. And that's why I took my talents to the PickleBro, good quality content to the masses, because my beef is with other pickleball podcasts. I'm telling you, they're unlistenable and I do not enjoy them.
Yeah.
Have you listened to the Pickleball Studio with Chris Olsen?
A little bit. Maybe I caught an off day.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. But
maybe I was already twisted in a bad light to say I'm not into this already. So maybe my mindset needs to shift a little.
Yeah, no, actually, I very much agree with you, Stolp. I find that I have podcast ADHD. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Anna Bright and Dylan Frazier are doing a podcast. I'll tune in. I don't last very long, and then I'll jump to another one, and then the Pickleball Studio. And to be fair, they're very good at what they do. I think they're probably like at the top of the space right now. And they have a lot of good information on paddles, on lead tape, but sometimes they tell their recaps and I'm just not interested. They have topics I'm not interested in. Sometimes they've got some insights into drama that we don't have because they've got a lot of pro connections. I will admit, I listened to that guy named James and Tyler Luong. They talked about Tyler's little run-in with Tyson McGuffin. And I did listen to all 20 minutes of that because I love the drama. But I didn't listen to the rest of their podcast. As soon as that chapter portion was over, I dipped. So I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, and maybe someone's going to say the same thing about us. But we're objectively the best. We're at top king court. We're on king court here.
If you're interested in the inside dynamics of the MLP and PPA, then that Tyler Luong and I think it's Jimmy is excellent. I like the Pickleball Studio, but I have to admit a lot of the other ones don't interest me much. I'd like to see more pickleball podcast content because I'm always looking for content to listen to.
Especially go ahead, Sol. Go ahead.
I was going to say that comes from somebody who reads the rule book and gets excited about it. He's saying that there's nothing good out there. so that's all you need to know out there is that if Sensei Jesse is falling asleep on some of these, there's only a handful out there that are worth listening.
And imagine, like, if a pro runs across this, imagine if you had a top 25 pro, maybe 2 or 3 of them, talk about strategy the way we do, right? It's not just paddles and the pro drama. It's like break down the nitty gritty of the game, how they see it. I want to know how James Ignatowicz and Tyson McGuffin see the court. Who should play left, right? Who's beta? They've got James Ignatowicz on the right. Is that because of his two-handed backhand? Is that because of the Ferrari forehand for Tyson McGuffin? You want that on the left? Where are you dinking to maximize the dynamic between you guys? When Matt Wright and Riley Newman were playing, I really want to know the conversations they were having to maximize their best. Thomas Wilson has an incredible forehand. I mean, he also has an incredible backhand, but when you compare his forehand backhand, he's a straight forehand guy. So why is Riley Newman playing on the left side and forcing Thomas Wilson into his backhand? Put Thomas Wilson on the left. Yeah, fine. Pinch him over to the alley to where his backhand is protected and let Riley Newman run all over the court like he does anyway and have his two-handed in the middle, and he's got a fine forehand. So, like, I want to know why they construct things the way they do. And just like that, I'm pretty sure the way I articulated that is going to be interesting to people because they have these conversations. We're having these conversations about where Tim should go when he plays with me. He's got that two-handed backhand. Do we want him in the middle or do we want my counter in the middle, right? Stolp, where are you going to be best roaming around? Jesse, do we want you on the left, even though you're going to play beta to me because you're better on the left with your dinking? Or are we going to actually finally traditionally put me on the left, put me in the alpha position, even though it kind of isolates my backhand and my counter punch from being as effective, and then puts your backhand counter more exposed, but you're on that more traditional beta side. These are real conversations we have all the time on the podcast and off. I want to see pros having that conversation. I think that's the next gold mine in the podcast space. So,
Ian, you just took a beef of mine and actually had a really interesting and articulated take on that. So I'm going to give you credit for having a good beef, but just because of my beef this week. That's it. Not your actual beef, but that you rolled. Oh, I'm proud of you.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to jump on your liver and have you carry me the rest of the
way. Perfect.
All right. Yeah, let's get into the topic, guys. It's a heavy aspect on team pickleball, and we're going to end it with like the individualism versus the coaching, the group mentality of it. But to kick it off, I'm going to go through this awesome event that we just hosted as the Pickle Bros. Now, unfortunately, Jesse and Stolp were not able to be there. We were very disappointed. Jesse had traveling for family stuff. Stolp, you're just in recovery, but you're coming back soon, very, very soon. Mm-hmm. So Tim and I kind of co-hosted this event. We hosted the Pickle Bros mixed team event. We compiled 32 players, 16 men, 16 women. We selected 8 captains, and there were 10 or 12 guys who could have been captains, but we picked 8 of them based on, reliability, communication, enthusiasm. So we had 8 captains. We then ran a snake draft with those guys. We had some spectators as well. I drafted out an itinerary of all the players, their strengths, their weaknesses. It was very subjective because, I was doing a ton of legwork at this point. But we did a snake draft, which is you have the 8 captains. Excuse me. The first guy's going to pick 1. The second guy will pick 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And when you get to 8, that 8th guy will pick again. And then you'll go down 8 down to 1. And then 1 will pick again. And then you climb back up. So we had 3 rounds of this. We ended up picking our teams. And what was really interesting is the 8 captains were men. And so there were 16 women in the draft and 8 men left in the draft. So depending on if you took a woman early, you were going to get forced into taking a guy. The way it all orchestrated, the last guy was not going to be a pick. It was going to be forced into. Now, who that person is, we didn't know, but there was a lot of manifesting your own destiny and compiling your team. And I'm going to get Tim's take on this after I kind of go through what we're doing. But it was such a fun blast. And we did the snake draft. Captains went out, had practice sessions with their team. They picked colors, they picked name. So there was a lot of responsibility around being captain. Then we ran an 8-man bracketed tournament at one of our local parks. We had to reserve the courts, but we had perfect weather, perfect day. And so you had a guaranteed 3 matches. So the winner went 3-0. The ultimate loser, me, went 0-3. Oh, and I'm going to steal Tim's thunder. Tim won. So you've got
ultimate winner. Yeah,
the ultimate winner and the ultimate loser on your podcast right now. And everyone else went a mixed 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. So you had 3 team matches. Each team match had 4 games in it: a men's, a women's, a mixed, and a mixed. If you ended up going 3 and 1 or 4 and 0 and sweeping, you advanced. But if you went 2 and 2, we ran our own Dream Breaker, much like what the MLP has constructed. We did change it up for our purposes a little bit for time, for giving everyone like a fair shake at playing in that match, because there's a lot of people who were there who were not single specialists. So we ran our own Dream Breaker, and it was a massive success. Tim's, so let's go over the Dream Breaker real quick before I move on. It was a good big success, but a Dream Breaker is going to be a rally scoring game to 21. That's how the MLP does it.
Okay.
And every 3 points scored, a new pairing will come in. So Anna Lee and Anna Bright will play singles.
Right.
If they go 2 and 1, so Anna Bright scores 2, Anna Lee scores 1, they'll go off, and the next people come in. What we did is we had it. So a good example is our first Dream Breaker. My wife played, and she played against her opponent until one of them got to 3 points. So not a total of 3 points being scored, but until someone got to 3 points. And at 3 points, there was a changeover. Then the second pairing came in until someone got to 6 points. At the third leg, there was a changeover until someone got to 9 points. And then the last pairing would close out the game to 12. But we also did it rally scoring. So they moved quickly. You could perhaps have someone who is a massive underdog, like, again, my wife playing against a guy like Matt Jones, that could have theoretically happened. And if Matt serves it into the net or serves it long, my wife just scored a point on a 5-0 plus singles player. So rally scoring makes things interesting. So we definitely finagled it for our own purposes, but it was a massive success. I had only one person came away with a bit of a negative vibe, which was unfortunate. All the other 31 people thought it was the best thing they've ever done, had such a blast, very positive. So that's a quick recap of what we did. I could honestly talk for an hour about the strategy, about how I made decisions, why I did certain things, but I want to move quickly. Tim, can you kind of give me your emotional, now I've kind of gone through the logistical recap. And this is, again, building into, we're going to be talking about team pickleball, individualism, coaching, mentoring. Give me your take on what we just did.
Yeah. I think it's the most fun I've ever had in pickleball. And I'm kind of surprised by that, because I'm usually the curmudgeon that no picnic atmosphere. Let's keep it quiet. Let's concentrate. This is serious what we're doing. We're all trying to get better. This was a detraction from all of that. And I was so into it from the very beginning. The old adage, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. That's not true. Just get Ian on board. And then just let him go with it. Because Ian, dude, you were so good at every aspect of this and organizing it and keeping everyone on the same page and making sure that every detail was accounted for. And yeah, we all chimed in because we all wanted to help because we were all fired up about this. But you were the face of this. So I give you a ton of credit. But everything about this, the draft, dude, we're in fantasy football season. So I'm all about snake drafts. And it was so fun to construct our team. Because you had to prioritize. You had to be like, all right, so am I going to emphasize women's doubles or the mixed component, or am I going out there and trying to get the best male player there is? And you could see that everybody had an idea what they wanted to do as they were drafting. Like it was very clear what strategy everybody was trying to use. I emphasized my ladies players, and they came through in flying colors. And the day of the event, the draft was fantastic. It was so fun. Everybody liked it. We did it on like a Zoom style chat. Now, I will say this might be news to some of the players in the tournament that we had a draft. We didn't necessarily make that super public. I think it's because that being our first go around, we wanted to make sure that nobody got their feelings hurt if they were picked later than they would have liked or something like that. But anyway, the day of the event, well, first of all, a bunch of teams got together before the tournament started and had practice sessions. We tried out the Dream Breaker, and that was I loved the Dream Breaker in practice and in real life, because what that looked like is you had the team members lined up along the fence. We had fences that were separating each of the courts, and teammates were all lined up on both teams along the fence as players would cycle in and out. And the atmosphere was just fantastic. And everybody was cheering everybody on, not just for the Dream Breaker, but all day long. The venue, there's a playground there. So there were kids. Our buddy brought a grill for hot dogs. We had donuts. We had Gatorade coolers. We had tents. We had camping chairs. Everybody was supporting each other. Yeah, the team colors. And I was really surprised because I've never been huge into coaching just because, I'm selfish. I'm all about myself. But I was living and dying with the success.
You really were, dude. It was so fun.
Teammates. I was so obnoxiously loud, and we're doing this in a neighborhood. So I'm kind of looking over my shoulder. I'm like, am I being annoying? But I really was so into it. I was so into my teammates' success, and I could feel like I was the team captain, and I could sense that they were really motivated by my words of encouragement and my shouting and my coaching. And I was really invested. Like I really cared. This was not an act. I wasn't trying to keep them involved. Like I really cared. And it didn't count for duper or anything, but there was some pride to it. I drafted these guys. This is my squad. I chose you each for a reason, and now I want to see it to fruition. And we were responding to each other. We was the second to last guy picked in this draft. Me and we beat Louis and Monty. Monty was the first guy drafted. And you should have seen him, and maybe you saw me, but he was super, he was all over the place, just exclaiming in whatever language he wanted, just being like really enthusiastic and like, yeah, let's go. And we were all like that. And I don't know if you would expect that to be the case from team to team, because, hey, we're just showing up on a Saturday afternoon. We're just having some fun. But people really wanted to win. Like there was a real motivation to perform out there. And and to succeed for each other. So I couldn't be happier with how it went. It was an absolute blast. It lasted for the exact amount of time that we had the courts reserved for, which was just great. I mean, it felt pretty natural. Families, it was great to see people that you don't usually see. I say that about the Duper League too, how it's nice to get out and play with people that you don't usually play with. This brought the family aspect into it too. And it was at a park. It was a beautiful day. What's funny is after that day, it started to get cold and rainy, but the weather held out long enough for our event.
We quite literally, that was the last nice day we've had since we did it. It's been a little gross since. Yeah.
It worked out. It worked out great. So I would, going forward, I would look to do this as often as possible. I think it really drove home just how special the sport is and just how fun it is. It's fun at its nature. Like we're super serious about it. We all want to get better. We all want to study the game, but it is just a fun game. And that really drove home that aspect of it. So I loved it.
Before I pitch it over to Stolp and Jesse and get their takes on it as outside perspective, because they weren't there, a couple things I wanted to jump on and respond to, Tim, was your team chemistry was so good because of you. And you have almost self-indicted yourself as a guy who's very selfish, focused on yourself, an individual player. But to see that side of you, that team, that captaincy, that responsibility, that leadership, dude, you were the reason we was so pumped up and yelling in English and in Chinese and just the most I've ever seen him come out of his shell. You designed that based on how you behaved and your intention. And there were some captains who I would have loved to have seen more from them. Even myself, I was not as involved like you or like Mick or like Michael McGregor as I would have liked to have been.
Those guys were great, by the way. Those guys were both
just
great.
Incredible. I mean, just I again, I'm telling you, I could do this for 3 hours just going on and on about it. They were so great. I was facilitating and kind of making sure everything was running smoothly, so I was a little distracted. My number 2 man, Tim Shepard, my lefty, my new homie, stepped up and was coaching our women, helping them. My wife was on my team. Like it all around. That chemistry is absolutely designed by your leader and by the people around you. So that's why I wanted to let you know. That's why it was amped up. It was 100% you. You gave him the confidence to do that. And also the draft really was so fun. I like our decision to not publish it the first time around. We wanted to figure it out, but we're going to be doing this with a men's event in November. And that will be a live recorded draft, and we're going to publish it on the PickleBros channel so people can know why you were picked, what your captain's thinking. Feelings will be hurt. People will be overinflated. I think it's going to be awesome. I think that actually is going to be a really beautiful part of it. And yeah, you're right. Constructing your team. Did you want to be strong in men's? Did you want to be strong in women's? Did you want to have a strong man and a woman for your mixed dynamic? Were you trying to build yourself out for the Dream Breaker? There were so many ways to construct your team. But Stolp, I want to throw it to you first. As a dude from outside the perspective, you weren't even at the event. I don't think you were in state. Tell me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, my name a little bit because I would have loved to be there. I serve on the board of Pikes Peak Habitat for Humanity. We had an all-day strategy meeting, and that's important work. Affordable housing in El Paso County is important work. I volunteer. I'm really passionate about it. So shout out to Pikes Peak Habitat for Humanity. That's the reason I couldn't be there, because gosh, I wish I could just experience what you just talked about. And my gut reaction and my initial feedback and feeling from it is, this is what it's all about. Like what you just defined in a tournament setting. This is the pickleball community, bringing people together, having fun, creating families, having it well organized, making it really, really inclusive. Oh my gosh. I was just so proud to be a part of it. And just because the name PickleBros was on it, I was a part of it from afar. I could not be more proud to have my name associated to such positive vibes to the community. That is really what it's all about. And just to peel that back a little bit more, it's because it was so well organized. However, this design creation came to be and how it started, and Ian taking the run, and however that looked, and Tim, really sparking that fire. It was so well run from top to bottom. There was great communication, and what it provided was a coaching and mentoring opportunity. We always talk about, hey, how can I learn how to play up? How can I get involved with some of these players that maybe wouldn't share court time with others in a traditional setting? And I was just a part of conversations from afar, or listened in, about how some of these team captains with some of the picks coach them, and the importance of that, and to have a mentor, have a on for some of these in-depth pickleball conversations to make people better. It's one thing about having fun and being on a court with someone who may be skill set above you, but to actually get valuable feedback, learnings in a positive environment, you cannot replicate that in traditional senses. So it feels innovative too. This is a really innovative process that I was unaware of. You mentioned MLP and some of this dream breaker stuff. So there's pieces to this that exist out there, and maybe this format exists in general. But think about what you just heard, listeners, in terms of there was a tournament date, and then it rallied the community together. And you know who won at the end of the day? It wasn't Tim's team, and it wasn't Ian's team losing.
Well, it was Tim's team. Come on.
Okay, maybe technically it was, but the sport of pickleball won on that day, on Saturday. I love this sport, and that's what I love being on the podcast, just to advocate for this great game. You know how many people I talked about this to post event? I told everybody in my non-pickleball life what the Pickle Bros did, the community together. It made me so proud to be a part of that. And I went on social media later that day or that night and saw participants from the tournament sharing. Could not wait to talk about it. Best experience ever. So much fun. Smiles, families, pictures. Like, love that anymore. And that's what makes me proud to, one, be a pickle bro, and two, be a part of this pickleball community, because it brings people together. So those are my initial feedback and feelings behind this. So thanks. Yeah, that's from me.
Awesome, Stolt. Appreciate all that good take there. Jesse, what did you hear from afar?
Yeah, people had a great time. I saw those Facebook posts too. Several people said it was the best tournament they've ever been a part of. So I think everybody involved should be extremely proud of themselves. My wife participated, had a great time. But I look at the sort of traditional standard tournaments in our area from time to time, and I notice there are several lifetime tournaments coming up and a couple others, and they're not really drawing much interest. I think there's 30 people registered for the Colorado Springs lifetime event, and then even fewer than that for some other ones. And I don't know why. I mean, they're not overpriced. It's a nice facility, but it just seems like people are tiring of the standard tournament experience, whereas this one really lit on fire. It has an authenticity and organicness that people really loved. The only complaint that I've heard, well, the main complaint that I've heard was from people who were not able to participate. They were not invited. And, one limitation is it doesn't really scale up. This is not something you could do for 500 people, right? You had this beautiful little park that has 4 courts. So you were limited to 32 people, and not everyone could be invited. And, that's, the Pickle Bros are not Pickleball Inc. This was not a big corporate event.
Yep.
Yeah, I lament that there were some people who were like, why didn't I get invited? I was like, well, we had a max of 32 people, and like, we would have been happy to have you, and we're running this one again. And there are guys who I want included. Like we compiled, as Tim and I and a couple other guys were compiling the list for the men, I got 57 names down of guys who could be involved in that. It's like, how do you narrow 57 down to 32? Some people are going to feel left out. So we had a voting system. I did an Excel spreadsheet. I got all fancy with it. But yeah, that is a downside to it. But I love kind of where you took it, Jesse, comparing it to the other tournaments that are having lower participation, what's going on. Because I want to open up the question, and Tim, I think I'm going to throw it to you first, is what we just did. Is team-based competition the future of pickleball?
Well, it's not exactly practical to set up. I mean, it takes a lot more planning, and it's harder to get, just really simply, it's harder to get 8 people at the same place, same time than it is 4. I mean, it's hard enough to get 4, and take that from me as a duper league manager and seeing all the forfeits and, frustrations with getting a hold of people that you have a match with. That's only 4 people. So, I mean, it's definitely a challenge, but I think if you have the buy-in from the community, and it takes something like what we just did last weekend to give the buy-in for future events, then it can definitely happen. It just takes a lot of planning, months in advance in some cases. I mean, we'll see. We're about to do one in November. And we were talking about, geez, are we going to have to do one before that? Because so many people loved it. I mean, I'm on board with whatever we can do, but as it gets colder, there are those challenges. You can't just go to your public park anymore and try to reserve those courts. I mean, we had the conversation before with the beefs of the courts that aren't necessarily available despite the popularity of the sport. Well, a team competition takes a lot of courts. So, I mean, that's always going to be a challenge. But if you can ever do this, and I think it's absolutely worth trying to make it happen, because it just brings people together, and it's still so competitive. Like, it's not picnic pickleball like I talked about before. There's actual competition. Like, people care about this. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So I think it brings in the people that just love it for the social aspect, and it brings in people that love the competition of it. It's the best of both worlds. So I think it's the future that I want to be a part of. It seems like MLP wants to be a part of this too, because that's the way they're taking it. So I want to do this as often as possible. I'll just answer the question like that. I want to make this happen as often as I can, because I think it's totally worth it. I think matches can be for duper or not for duper. I'd like to try it for duper. See what the difference is there. I think that would be really interesting. And imagine, like, with duper, what you want to do there is switch partners as often as possible. I mean, you're going to get plenty of that just in one team tournament setting. So I think it's got a lot of application for that as well. But even with or without, like, it's still the way to go. It's so much fun. So I'm on board.
Yeah, as much as possible is just not enough. Stolp, kind of, where do you see the direction? Do you see more of this, more individual-based tournaments?
Jesse got my mind grapes squishing about up in my noggin a little bit, because my mind grapes, they're squished. It's
making some fine wine up in that head, Stolp.
That's right. Well, because some of the points that he drew out were the court availability. It's only available to people, and you can't upscale it. I mean, it's difficult, right? To do this on a scale of 500 people. And then that got me thinking about, well, how would you upscale it? And then what would you rely on as your, as a team captain in a draft to recruit players that you don't know? And you know what it went back to? And we haven't brought up this naughty word in a long time, was duper. And I think that there's going to have to be some relationship with duper to upscale it, to bring it to the next level, to do something where it's out of the community. Because, okay, what I heard was a great positive experience. People loved it. And this is in a small enclosed vacuum of Colorado Springs. How do you do it? How do you do it elsewhere? And it led me to think of, some of those upscaling questions that Jesse brought to light, because it's great in theory, but what would make it not great? And it would, if it didn't run through a tournament director like the Eoin Tim LLC, that was amazing. But how could you do that on a statewide scale or national? And it has to involve partnerships with bigger pickleball entities. And so I think it's possible, but then it just gets into that, if you have something good, why would you change it? And that's what Duper was at one point, and they keep changing it. And so I don't know. I kind of am going back and forth. So we'll have to revisit me in a few weeks once my mind grapes kind of settle.
Let me respond to that, because what you just brought up, I've already thought about, because, my brain doesn't turn off. How would you run it with 500 people? Yes, Duper would need to be involved, but across a single dimension, and that is Duper rating. That's all they would need to be involved in. And if they can get their act together to support and supply accurate Duper ratings, then I don't need them for anything else. Because what you do, you got 4 players on a team. Let's just say you get 4 5-0s. Their average Duper score is going to be 20 as a team. So you just look at, okay, say Duper score 19 to 21. That's your bracket for teams. And then you can have 17 to 19, and you can have 15 to 17. And people can sign up with their own teams, bring together their own teams. But the team Duper score, the team experience and skill set has to fall within a certain threshold. So you can absolutely do this at scale if you have the court space, and that's a whole nother thing, right? 4 courts versus our big MVP 15 courts. Like, you could run this at MVP. It would be like running, or I mean, even in Denver, they run the Rocky Mountain Championships. They run the volume of matches that it would take to run an open tournament where you just sign up with your own players. But like anything, you would fall under a ranking category. And yeah, we always have some what's it called, sandbagging, and people playing where they shouldn't, or maybe going too high. It's like, yeah, you're David swinging to Goliath, but you don't have a sling right now. Like, don't mess with that. So there's always going to be problems of that caliber when you're dealing with competition. But honestly, I mean, and I love that we're bringing back up Duper. All I want from Duper still is to give me some damn good ratings. Give me accurate ratings. Don't make it make sense, and then I don't need you for anything else. I can manage it from there. So I think the way how Jesse moved your brain a certain direction, and then your brain grapes went a certain direction, is great. But I've already thought about it, and you don't need Pickleball Inc. to get involved. You can absolutely do this as a local yokel event, assuming you have the court infrastructure. Jesse, what are you thinking?
I think it may be the future of pickleball. It's fun. It's interesting. None of that is relevant. The real reason is because Steve Kuhn likes it. And Steve Kuhn has just acquired 80 or 90% of the top pros. So I think whatever Steve Kuhn wants, he's going to get.
I think that's pretty dang good. Earlier we were talking about podcasts. Apparently MLP and PPA are back making some agreement behind closed doors to reconcile. I don't care. I just don't care. So whether Steve Kuhn wins, or was it Tom Dundon, is he PPA? No matter how all that shakes out between them, I don't really care. I do think this is the future of pickleball, because I got my first taste of something that is better. We've often so talked about product on this, right? Duper, give me a good product. Or is this tournament a good product? Now, I'm biased, obviously, because this was our event, and I took a substantial lead in the group project. So I'm I'm tilted toward it going well. But it really went so well. And I knew it would be successful logistically, because I'm a control freak and I was in control of it. What I didn't know was how amazing the reception and everyone's attitudes and their take on it was going to be. So I think this is going to be the future of pickleball because it gives you those matches. It gives you competition. But it also puts in other elements of team construction and coaching and how you're going to approach a match. And like our very first match, we did not try to win. My team pushed for the Dream Breaker. And guess what? We got to a Dream Breaker. Now, a couple of my players underperformed in the Dream Breaker. I was our last leg. I had too big a deficit to beat Matt Jones. That was pretty frustrating. I think I could have pulled it off, but he was up by like 7 points on me in rally scoring. You're not going to win that way. But I do think that this is the future of pickleball, and we're closing in on time here. But I do want to, and this could be its whole own episode, and maybe we bring it into its own episode one day. But I want Tim, individual versus the coaching mindset. You had a breakthrough personally. Please talk about it. I find it to be one of the coolest, most inspiring things I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be inspiring per se, but this kind of made an impact on how I view pickleball and just who I choose to play with. Before I had heard that it's better not to play at all than to play down. And I'm not saying that anybody in this event constituted playing down because we picked our participants carefully, but I think in general, before this event, I was like, oh, no. I want to get better. It's all about me. It's all about, playing up so I can be challenged. I can be, I can push to excel and get better, all that stuff. And no, I don't want to play with that dude over there because he's not good enough. I have a completely different mindset now. First of all, there is a bond that I made with my teammates and everybody there. And I'm seriously invested in all of those players' growth. And I want to play a role in that. I want to hang out with them because I love their enthusiasm. And I've never been a big coach before, but the player coach angle of this was really something that I grasped onto and ran with, because you are personally invested in your team's success. And I love that aspect of the player coach. And so you want to get the most out of your teammates and the guys that you're playing with, so, almost for selfish reasons, because you're trying to win. Like you're part of this thing. And so you're teaching people along the way and trying to get them to, see things a little bit differently, to try this strategy or that strategy, or take advantage of this player's weakness, try to capitalize on these opportunities that we have in this matchup. And I've experienced that in doubles pickleball for sure. Ian, I remember you and I had a really cool time playing against Jesse and Stolp, and we talked a lot of strategy in the days leading up to that matchup. Take that and just multiply it literally by 2, I guess. But even if you're not playing in a team competition, you just want to continue that camaraderie that the team competition type setup sets in motion. And I want to keep playing with these guys. And it's really interesting because ever since the tournament wrapped up, I've gotten opportunities to go and play with some really high level players. And I think before that, I would have put everything else on pause and leapt at that opportunity. And I'm still very interested in doing that. But now I'm feeling a tug in the other direction to sort of be that mentor for someone else, even if it's not in the team construct, but just to keep hanging out with those guys and keep playing and feeling their enthusiasm just in a rec play setting and continuing to see their growth. There's something about coaching too. And again, I love the player coach thing, but it makes you think about the game more. Having to articulate what you're seeing out there. I didn't have to do that before this. I would just go and do. It was all instinct. It was all reaction, muscle memory. But it makes you really think about what you're doing, not just the the actual shots and what's the word I'm thinking of, the mechanics of it, but also the strategy, and having to explain that to somebody and seeing them take what you're saying and use it and get better is just so gratifying. And I don't want that to go by the wayside just because the team competition is over. Like, I want to keep doing that. So it's really changed how I see the game. And I'm almost willing to bring a Bluetooth speaker on court now. Like I'm like coming around to like all these things about the game that other people have always liked. I'm now coming around to that. And it's strange. It really does feel like I've seen the light a little bit. All right, Jesse, what do you got?
I want to throw it to the sensei. Respond to the sensei junior here.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I know, Tim, you've mentioned that you came to not really like tennis. I think you've even said that you hated it. And at times I felt like you were starting to hate pickleball too, that you just were such a Debbie Downer when you were playing, and you felt a lot of pressure, a lot of weight on your shoulders, almost like it's like a job. And to see you take this joy in mentoring, it's just great. I think it's awesome. I think that you've got the spirit of pickleball there. One of the people that I bring up a lot on this podcast who I really admire is Mike Lee. And Mike Lee, as I've mentioned before, took the time to give me and my wife tips on how to drill when he didn't know us. We were not even 3.0. And
Well,
over
as
the
you
years,
did for me, right? Like you're just passing that along.
it's just part of my DNA. Like if I come across a player who I think has some ability and some ambition and is receptive to feedback, of course I want to serve in that mentorship role. I mean, primarily, my primary responsibility, I think, is to myself, is to get better, and I always put that first. But along the way, I do try to help other people, as Mike Lee and others have helped me, and I find that very gratifying. And I think Tim finds it gratifying too, which is awesome.
Yeah. Stolp, I'm going to pass off the final closing thought to your mind grapes.
Yeah. Well, again, in the spirit of the advocacy for the sport, what you just heard in Tim's example is he is making the sport better. And not only just by bringing joy to it through coaching, but helping the next generation, not by age, but the generation and skill set up and above. And that's what this sport is going to need to continue to evolve in the right direction. How do you find ways to naturally select the coaches and the players and develop them? It can't, outside of paying for lessons and this and that, like what we went through a whole episode of talking about is evolving the next generation of this sport to make it better. And then you pass the baton, and you hope, as a coach, you hope they pass you up, and then they reciprocate that to somebody else in the future. And that's what this beautiful sport is getting better through the innovation of a tournament format like this, through leaders in the community like Ian, Tim, and Jesse, and this is going to make the sport of pickleball better as a whole. And I'm just so confident over time with some of the issues we have with things like Duper or the MLP format or this and that, it will get resolved. We are in the infancy stages of growth. And so there is going to be some pain points. But what you heard is a bright light shining onto the sport of pickleball. And what great fun it was for me just to watch and hear the joy from these different angles and seats around this table to help bring the sport to where it needs to go.
Awesome. Well, listeners, there you have it. This isn't going away. I don't think it's going away in pickleballdom at large, and it's certainly not going away when it comes to the Pickle Bros. You will be hearing more team events where we love it. We'll be putting more on, giving more recaps. There will be videos. We'll put that draft up. If anyone is interested in the more fine logistics of this and perhaps want to run your own event, put them in the comments below. I will put out a special 15, 20-minute episode just myself. I'll walk through my thought process, kind of how the other guys helped me out. It definitely wasn't just me. It was a team effort. But if
Give them
anyone-
our email address. We need to tell them our email address. We don't mention that enough.
PickleBros002@gmail.com. Go ahead and email us. If you want to have the logistics, I'll also respond to you by email. Happy to put it out there. I think, and by the way, I made $30 on the thing. I bought Gatorades. We bought the courts. People overpaid me. I told them what I needed. They overpaid me. So I made $30. But we didn't do this for profit. And you don't need to do it for profit.
Transparency project. There it is.
Yeah. I made $30 because people didn't pay me what I asked. They paid me more. And it kind of annoyed me, but whatever. Yeah. It was a great event. It's not going away. We're happy to help you guys facilitate one as well. And at least just, lay the paving stones so that you can build something that works for you. But thank you for joining us for this episode of the Pickle Bros podcast. Like the video, share, comment, and email us. Subscribe to us on YouTube or any of your other podcasting channels. We love you guys. Stay safe and stay out of the kitchen.